The narcissist Hoover explained, and why it works until it doesn't. Opening hook, the grab. Everybody thinks the Hoover starts when the narcissist misses you. Nah. The Hoover starts when the narcissist realizes the new supply cannot regulate the monster they used to bring to your doorstep. The Hoover starts when they're sitting across from someone who is not you, someone who doesn't know how to handle the chaos, someone who doesn't have your patience, someone who isn't trained by 3 years of emotional whiplash to just accept whatever comes. The Hoover starts when they discover something terrifying. They did not replace you. They replaced access to you. And those are not the same thing. You see, when the narcissist left you for somebody new, they thought they were upgrading. They thought they were escaping. They thought they were trading in a defective model for a better version. But what they actually did was trade in a whole system. Infrastructure they didn't even realize was holding them together. You were not just a person. You were a power source. And now that power source has gone dark. By the time that reality hits them, something has already started happening to you. Your nervous system is healing. Your eyes are opening. Your peace is becoming more important than their potential. And here's the thing they're not prepared for. The Hoover stops working when the survivor finally stops being available to the fantasy. That's what we're going to understand today. Not just what a Hoover is, not just why it works, but why it inevitably fails, why it has a built-in expiration date, and why the survivor, that's you, or someone you love, eventually becomes unreachable no matter how many times the narcissist tries the exact same move that used to work. This is not about hoping they suffer. This is not about revenge. This is about understanding the actual mechanics of what's happening so you can protect yourself and accelerate your own healing. Let's get into it. Section 1. The Hoover is not love. It is a control check. I need to be very clear about something right from the start, because if you misunderstand this one thing, you'll keep falling for the same move over and over. A narcissistic Hoover is not usually about love. It is a control check. That's it. That's the beginning and the middle and the foundation of what we need to understand. When the narcissist reaches out to you, whether it's through a text, a call, a social media message, a chance encounter, or a mutual friend, they are not usually moved by a sudden wave of genuine missing you. They are checking whether they still have access. They are asking, in 100 different ways that sound like love, can I still affect you? Can I still confuse you? Can I still make you respond? Can I still pull guilt out of you? Can I still interrupt your peace? Can I still make you question yourself? Can I still get access to your nervous system? Can I still regulate myself using you? That's the real question underneath every Hoover. Now, the Hoover looks deceptive because they know, consciously or unconsciously, exactly how to package this control check so it sounds like vulnerability, accountability, or love. So they come back with messages that sound like this: I miss you. I think about you. I've changed. I'm in therapy. Nobody understands me like you. I had a dream about you. I just wanted closure. I hope you're doing okay. Can we talk like adults? I'm sorry for everything. I made a mistake. I know I hurt you. These messages land different. They land soft. They land like maybe they finally got it. Maybe they're finally ready. Maybe this time it's real. But here's the test that actually matters. What happens after you say no? That is the proof. If they accept your no with grace, if they respect your boundary, if they say something like, I understand, and I respect your choice, I hope you find peace, then maybe. And I say this very carefully, maybe there's a small chance some genuine growth has occurred. But if what happens after your no is anger, manipulation, cruelty, mockery, sudden coldness, threats, guilt-tripping, character assassination, reaching out through flying monkeys, continuing to contact you despite the boundary, making threats to themselves to pull you back in, proving they don't respect your no, then it was not love. It was access disguised as vulnerability. And that's the most important diagnosis you can make about a Hoover. The content of the message is irrelevant. The respect for your boundary is everything. A person who loves you respects your no. A control system tries to override it. The narcissist's Hoover is a control system. And once you understand that, you stop being hurt by it. You start seeing it for what it actually is. A button they're pushing, hoping the same mechanism still works. But what happens when the button stops working? We'll get there. First, you need to understand why it worked in the first place. Section 2. Why hoovering works. A T first. Okay, so here's where I need to be really honest with you, and I need you to hear this without shame. If you fell for the Hoover, you are not stupid. You are not broken. You are not weak. You are bonded. There is a massive difference, and I need you to feel that difference in your body. The reason the Hoover works initially is because of actual neuroscience. This is not opinion. This is not judgment. This is how the human brain is designed to work. Let me explain what's happening in your nervous system so you can understand why you responded the way you did. When you were in the relationship with the narcissist, your brain went through something called trauma bonding. This is a well-documented psychological phenomenon that happens when someone experiences cycles of abuse or neglect, followed by intermittent reinforcement, meaning moments of kindness, affection, or seeming understanding that come randomly and unpredictably. The effect of this pattern is that your brain becomes addicted to the anticipation of that good moment. Think about how a slot machine works. You don't get paid every time. You get paid randomly. And that randomness, that unpredictability, creates a stronger neurological response than consistent rewards would. Your brain on a trauma bond is literally like a person at a slot machine. You keep pulling the lever because eventually you might get the payout. And when that payout comes, when the narcissist is suddenly soft, suddenly kind, suddenly understanding, your brain floods with dopamine and oxytocin. These are the neurochemicals of motivation and bonding. Your brain is wired to seek connection. That's not a flaw. That's a feature. But when connection is tied to chaos and intermittent kindness, your brain gets confused. It starts associating intensity with love. It starts confusing emotional whiplash with intimacy. So when the narcissist comes back after an absence or after discarding you, they're not just reaching out as a person. They're reaching out as a stimulant. They know exactly which version of themselves to present. They don't come back as the cruel version. They don't come back as the dismissive version. They don't come back as the person who made you question your sanity. They come back as the beginning version, the soft version, the version that made you believe in potential, the version that had the right words at exactly the right moment. They come back with the performance of accountability. I've been thinking about what I did. I've been going to therapy. I realize now that I was wrong. But here's the thing. They haven't actually changed. They're just remembered which version of themselves used to make you believe they could change. They're performing the fantasy. And your nervous system, which is still trained to look for the good version, which is still bonded to the possibility of them being different, which is still producing those dopamine responses when it thinks there might be a chance, your nervous system gets triggered. You're not responding to reality. You're responding to the fantasy of who they could be. And they know it. They count on it. This is why the Hoover works at first. It's not because you're foolish. It's because you have a heart. Because you believe in the possibility of change. Because you were trained by years of intermittent reinforcement to keep looking for the good version. That's not weakness. That's actually a testament to how deeply capable you are of love and hope. But here's what's important. Understanding this mechanism is how you protect yourself from it. Once you understand that you're being triggered into a neurological response, not a logical one, you can start to question the response. You can say to yourself, this feeling I'm having right now, this is my trauma bond activating. This is my nervous system recognizing a pattern. This feeling is not the same as this being real. And that distinction is everything. If you're feeling this, if you're starting to understand your own responses to the Hoover, make sure you subscribe to the channel. Because understanding your own brain's conditioning is the beginning of breaking free from it. Section 3. The moment you pull your energy back. Now let's talk about what happens when you stop feeding the pattern. This can look different for different people. For some, it's a conscious decision to go no contact. For others, it's a slow fading where they just stop engaging, stop reacting, stop being available. For some, it's a sudden clarity that breaks the spell. But the result is the same. The survivor pulls their energy back. No more texts back. No more explanation. No more defending yourself to flying monkeys. No more checking their social media. No more reacting to bait. No more trying to prove your worth. No more rescuing them from the consequences of their choices. No more showing up at the moment of crisis. No more lending money that never comes back. No more listening to endless complaints. No more absorbing their emotional dysregulation like it's your job. The energy goes dark. And this is where something shifts that the narcissist is not prepared for. Because here's what the narcissist has been depending on, maybe without even knowing it consciously. You were not just a person to them. You were an emotional power source. Think about what you actually provided in that relationship. You paid bills they should have paid themselves. You cooked meals they could have cooked. You managed crises they created. You provided emotional labor without guaranteed reciprocity. You regulated their emotions because they couldn't do it themselves. You absorbed blame for things you didn't do. You forgave betrayals that would have destroyed most people. You stayed when anyone reasonable would have left. You made excuses for their behavior to others. You helped stabilize their image. You provided sexual access. You provided attention and admiration. You provided the mirror they used to see themselves as good. You were infrastructure. And now that infrastructure has gone offline, when that happens, the narcissist doesn't just miss you as a person. They miss the regulation you were providing. They miss the power source. They miss the ability to come home to someone who was trained to absorb their chaos. And suddenly things start to get harder for them in ways they don't understand. Bills pile up that used to get paid. Meals don't appear. Their emotional crises don't get managed by someone outside themselves. Their image isn't being protected by someone who loved them. Their chaos isn't being absorbed by someone willing to take it on. The narcissist looks around the casino of their own life and realizes the lights are out. And one of the first things they do is try to turn the power back on. That's when the Hoover gets serious. Section 4. The new supply gets the real version. Here's something that most people don't talk about, but it's absolutely crucial to understanding why the Hoover happens and what the narcissist is actually desperate about. When the survivor is no longer emotionally available, the narcissist often begins dumping more instability onto the new supply. The new supply walked in being told a story, a narrative that probably sounded something like this. My ex was crazy. My ex was controlling. My ex never appreciated me. My ex was jealous and insecure. You understand me better. You're different. You're my peace. Finally, someone who gets me. The new supply thought they won a prize. They thought they were the upgraded version. They thought they were the person who finally understood what nobody else could see. But what actually happened is they inherited a pattern. And once the survivor stops being the pressure release valve, once the survivor stops being the emotional dumping ground, the new supply gets to meet the real version of what you experienced. Not the charming performance, not the love bombing, not the version designed to make them feel special, but the actual person underneath, emotionally unstable, controlling, entitled, incapable of genuine accountability, addicted to external validation, and desperate for someone to regulate them. The new supply starts noticing things. They notice. The narcissist is jealous about things that don't make sense. The narcissist brings up the ex constantly. The narcissist becomes rageful over small things. The narcissist needs constant reassurance. The narcissist lies about things that don't matter. The narcissist blames them for things they didn't do. The narcissist seems to enjoy making them feel small. The narcissist promises and doesn't follow through. The narcissist keeps checking phones, monitoring activity, asking questions about who they're talking to. The narcissist becomes cold without explanation. The narcissist criticizes constantly. The narcissist doesn't actually care about their feelings. They just care about how their feelings affect the narcissist. And the new supply starts asking herself questions like, wait, why is he so obsessed with proving his ex was crazy? Why does he need me to validate him constantly? Why do I feel like I'm auditioning for a role that keeps changing? Why does he compare me to someone he said was terrible? Why do I feel smaller every time I'm with him? That's when the new supply becomes a problem too. Because the narcissist cannot actually change. They can just change the victim. So what happens is the narcissist starts resenting the new supply for not being perfect at the job of regulating them. The new supply was supposed to be different, but the narcissist is the same. And the same person cannot create a different result. So the narcissist becomes increasingly abusive, controlling, or emotionally unavailable to the new supply. And the new supply, who thought they had won, starts to understand that they actually inherited something much worse. They inherited someone else's nightmare. Here's the line that needs to land. The new supply did not win a prize. They inherited a pattern. And once you understand that, you can stop being jealous about the new supply. Because the new supply is not living the dream. The new supply is living your past, in real time. And they're about to start experiencing the same questions you asked. The only advantage you have is that you're no longer in the blast radius. Section 5. The monkey branch was not a glow-up. I want to talk about something called monkey branching, because understanding this completely changes how you see the narcissist's upgrade. Monkey branching is when someone emotionally or physically lines up the next relationship before fully releasing the current one. Like a monkey swinging from one branch to another, they grab the next branch before letting go of the first one. Why? Because they're terrified of standing alone. There's actually a name for this in psychology. It's called avoidant attachment when coupled with low frustration tolerance and high narcissistic traits. But let me say it plain English, they're terrified of being by themselves. Not because they're lonely in a normal way, but because being alone means facing themselves. Being alone means sitting with the emptiness. Being alone means no external validation. Being alone means no one is there to regulate their emotions. A healthy person who ends a relationship might take time alone, sit with the grief, Do therapy. Understand what went wrong. Learn something. Grow. Actually heal. A narcissist who ends a relationship usually immediately finds the next supply, rewrites the story of the last relationship, tells the new supply that the old supply was the problem, never sits with anything, never learns anything, never has to face themselves, never actually heals. The narcissist thinks the monkey branch proves they upgraded, that they grew up and found something better, that they moved on. But what it actually proves is that they cannot handle 5 minutes of solitude with their own internal emptiness. So they grabbed onto a new branch, told that branch they were special, and pretended the first branch was rotten all along. That's not an upgrade. That's addiction with a new flavor. And here's the karma built into this behavior. The monkey branch is built on avoidance, betrayal, lies, and fantasy. That foundation is not stable. That foundation cracks. The new supply eventually figures out they were the branch the narcissist grabbed, not because they were special, but because they were available. And that realization is a different kind of pain. So when you see the narcissist with a new supply, smiling, seemingly happy, seemingly finally at peace, what you're actually looking at is someone running from themselves at full speed, carrying a new person who will eventually realize they're not running towards something better. They're just running. And the person they're running from, the survivor, the person they discarded, the person they tried to convince everyone was the problem. That person is standing still, healing, getting clarity, building something real. Follow the narcop if this is resonating with you, because understanding the illusion of the monkey branch is essential to your recovery. It means you can stop comparing yourself to the new supply. You can stop thinking you got traded in for something better, because you were not traded in. You were escaped from, and the escape is only going to work for so long. Section 6. Self-absorbed regret is not remorse. This is a really important section, because this is where the Hoover often tricks people. The Hoover comes back, and the narcissist says things that sound like remorse. They might even cry. They might say things like, "I regret what I did to you. I'm so sorry. I've been thinking about how I hurt you. I understand now. I wish I could take it back." And a survivor who has been holding on to hope that the narcissist might finally get it, might finally understand the damage they caused, might finally become the person they could have been. That survivor hears these words and feels them deeply. But I need you to understand the difference between regret and remorse, because it's the difference between falling for the Hoover and being protected from it. Regret is self-focused. Remorse is other-focused. Regret says, "I hate that I lost you. I hate that you moved on. I hate that I can't control you anymore. I hate that you're healing without me. I hate that the new situation is harder than I thought. I hate that I got caught. I hate that you're not there to make my life easier. I hate that you're no longer reachable." Regret is all about what the narcissist lost, what they no longer have access to, what they can no longer control or use. Remorse is something different entirely. Remorse says, "I understand how my actions hurt you. I take full responsibility without minimizing or blaming you. I recognize the specific ways I damaged you. I respect your boundaries, even though I want to cross them. I do not need access to you in order to respect your healing. I will work on myself, whether you return or not. I accept that you may never forgive me, and that's appropriate. Your healing is separate from my redemption." Remorse requires the narcissist to be other-focused, to understand impact, to prioritize someone else's well-being above their own need for access or forgiveness. And here's the truth. Most narcissists are incapable of remorse. They can perform regret. They can cry and apologize and say all the right words, but they cannot achieve the shift in consciousness that remorse requires. So when they come back with the Hoover, when they're saying all these things that sound like remorse, here's the question you have to ask yourself. Are they grieving the harm they caused, or are they grieving the control they lost? That is the question that protects you. Because if they're grieving the harm, they will respect your no. They will honor your boundary. They will let you go because your healing is more important than their access. But if they're grieving the control, they will get angry when you don't respond. Try new tactics when old ones don't work. Contact you through other people. Create emergencies. Make threats. Use your own compassion against you. Keep pushing. The narcissist coming back with what looks like remorse is often just regret wearing a fancy outfit. And that outfit fools people because people want to believe in change. People want to believe that love and accountability are possible. People want to believe that the person who hurt them finally understands. But belief is not the test. Behavior is the test. The test is, do they accept your no, or do they override it? That's it. Everything else is words. Section 7. Why the Hoover comes too late. By the time the narcissist hoovers, something has already happened to the survivor. You've gone through a transformation, not a small one, a significant one. You've started to notice the patterns. The apology pattern where they apologize for everything except the actual harm. The bait pattern where they try to pull you back into engagement through your own empathy, your own guilt, your own hope. The love bombing pattern where they shower you with attention for a few days and then go cold. The guilt hook pattern where they remind you of the good times or make you feel responsible for their emotional state. The fake emergency pattern, where something urgent happens right when you're finally getting peace. The manufactured nostalgia pattern, where they bring up inside jokes or memories specifically designed to trigger your dopamine response. The I've changed performance pattern, where they claim therapy, spiritual awakening, medication, or new self-awareness. But the proof is just more words. The way every single conversation somehow leads back to their needs, their pain, their perspective, their version of events. You've started to notice that you're not actually being seen in this. You're being manipulated. And as you notice these patterns, something shifts in your nervous system. Your body begins to heal. You start sleeping better because you're not in constant threat detection mode. You start breathing easier because you're not managing someone else's emotional dysregulation. You start thinking more clearly because your cortisol levels are stabilizing. You start feeling safer because you're not being gaslit anymore. Your nervous system is learning. This person is no longer a threat. This relationship is over. I can relax now. And as your nervous system heals, your perception clears. The things that used to confuse, you start to make sense. The red flags that you overlooked or rationalized start to be visible. The promises that never materialized start to feel like what they were. Manipulation. The love that you thought was unconditional starts to look like it was conditional on your usefulness. This clarity is devastating, but it's also liberating. So by the time the narcissist hoovers, the survivor has often already started this journey of waking up. And here's what's crucial. The Hoover works until the survivor stops needing the fantasy to be true. That line is important. Write it down. Remember it. Live in it. Because once you get to the point where you no longer need them to have changed, once you no longer need them to finally understand, Once you no longer need them to come back and make things right, the Hoover has no power. It's like showing someone a credit card offer when they already have a job. It's irrelevant. It's not addressing a need that exists anymore. The survivor has moved on to needing something different. They need peace. They need truth. They need stability. They need people who show up consistently. They need emotional reciprocity. They need someone who doesn't require them to be smaller, so the other person can feel bigger. The Hoover cannot provide any of that. So the Hoover comes too late because it's addressing a need that the survivor no longer has. Section 8. The science of why you don't feel the same anymore. Let me explain to you what's actually happening in your brain and body when you start to feel emotionally detached from someone who used to have complete control over your nervous system. This is neuroscience, and it's really beautiful when you understand it, because it proves that healing is not just emotional, it's physical. When you were in the trauma bond, your nervous system was in a state of dysregulation. That means your sympathetic nervous system, the fight or flight system, was in overdrive. Your body was in constant threat detection. Cortisol, the stress hormone, was at elevated levels. Adrenaline was on standby. Your amygdala, the alarm bell of your brain, was hyperactive. You were in a state of chronic stress. When the narcissist came back around, especially during love bombing, your body flooded with dopamine and oxytocin. These are the chemicals of reward and bonding. So even though your mind might have said, "This is dangerous," your body said, "This is my drug." That's a powerful combination. But here's what happens when you go no contact and stay no contact. Over time, your nervous system begins to recalibrate. Your cortisol levels normalize. Your adrenaline response becomes less activated. Your amygdala becomes less hyperactive. Your parasympathetic nervous system, the rest and digest system, starts to activate. Your body literally begins to heal at a cellular level. And as that happens, something interesting occurs. The dopamine response to the narcissist begins to diminish. At first, no contact can feel like withdrawal. You might crave the contact. You might miss them. You might feel panic. You might be tempted to check on them. That's withdrawal. That's your brain adjusting to the absence of the stimulus it had become dependent on. But over time, the brain adapts. It stops reaching for the hit. It stops expecting the stimulation. The neural pathways that were trained to fire in response to the narcissist's presence start to quiet down because they're not being reinforced anymore. This is called extinction in neuroscience. It's when a conditioned response gradually disappears because the stimulus is no longer present. So when the narcissist tries to hoover you, when they send that message designed to trigger the dopamine hit, your body no longer responds the same way. You're not the same person who was addicted to the intermittent reinforcement. Your nervous system has detoxified. The same message that used to make your heart race, that used to make you obsessively check your phone, that used to pull you back in, that message now looks like spam. Spam with childhood trauma attached to it, but spam. And spam, you know how to handle. You delete it. You move on. This is why the Hoover eventually doesn't work, and it's all happening at a neurological level. Your body is protecting you by not responding the way it used to. That's not a character flaw. That's a feature. Your nervous system is smart, and once you understand that, you can trust it more. Section 9. The flying monkeys start getting tired. Let me talk about something that often happens in the background while all this is going on. The flying monkeys. Flying monkeys are the people the narcissist recruited to support their narrative, manage their supply, attack the survivor, defend their reputation, or just provide an audience for their drama. At first, the flying monkeys might believe the narcissist's story. They might think, the survivor is bitter. The survivor is crazy. The survivor is making it up. The narcissist is misunderstood. The new supply is better. The narcissist finally found someone who appreciates them. So the flying monkeys help enforce the narrative. They might attack the survivor on social media. They might tell the narcissist that the survivor is spreading lies. They might freeze the survivor out of mutual friendships. They might become unpaid therapists and emotional supporters for the narcissist. But here's what eventually happens. The flying monkeys start experiencing the narcissist directly. Maybe they become the emotional dumping ground. Maybe they watch the narcissist treat the new supply the same way they treated the survivor. Maybe they watch the narcissist move on to a different flying monkey when they try to set a boundary. Maybe they start seeing the inconsistencies in the narcissist's stories. Maybe the narcissist triangulates them, compares them to other flying monkeys, makes them feel like they're not good enough. Maybe they realize they're doing all this emotional labor for someone who doesn't actually care about them. And that's when the awakening starts. A flying monkey, once they experience the narcissist firsthand, becomes a walking piece of evidence. They become someone who knows the truth from their own experience. And that's devastating for the narcissist, because the flying monkeys were supposed to stay loyal. They were supposed to keep believing. They were supposed to keep defending. But when they wake up, the narcissist loses not just one supporter. They lose credibility, because a flying monkey who has seen the behavior directly cannot pretend it didn't happen. They cannot unknow what they learned. And when they start talking to other people, when they start warning others, when they start telling the truth about what they witnessed, that's when the narcissist's support system starts to crumble. This is what I call collateral karma. The narcissist thought they were building a permanent support system by recruiting flying monkeys, but what they were actually doing was creating a network of future witnesses. Here's the line. Some people do not believe your story until they become a chapter in it. And once they become a chapter, they cannot deny it. They cannot pretend it was something else. They cannot unsee what they saw. So the flying monkeys, who are supposed to help the narcissist win, eventually become part of the reason the narcissist loses credibility. That's not justice. That's just mathematics. Section 10. The new supply starts asking questions. As we continue through this, I want you to really understand what happens to the new supply, because this is where you're going to start seeing the actual justice of the situation. The new supply walked in thinking they won, but now they're noticing things. They're asking questions that sound innocent, but are deeply revelatory. Why is your ex still such a big topic in our relationship? Why do you seem obsessed with proving you won? Why do your stories about the past keep changing depending on who you're talking to? Why do you need constant praise and reassurance? Why do you get angry when I set boundaries? Why are you comparing me to someone you said was terrible? Why does every conversation about the future somehow become about your trauma from the past? Why am I feeling like I'm auditioning for a role that keeps changing? Why do you check my phone? Why do you get jealous about things that don't make sense? Why can't I ever do anything right? Why do I feel smaller than I did when we started? These questions are the sound of someone waking up. And when the new supply starts asking these questions, when the new supply starts setting boundaries or expressing concerns, the narcissist typically does not respond with accountability or humility. Instead, they become more controlling. They escalate. They become more critical. They become more demanding. They triangulate, compare the new supply to the ex, to potential others, to an impossible standard. They gaslight, deny that they said or did things they absolutely said or did. They use the silent treatment. They create emergencies to pull focus back to themselves. And eventually, the new supply becomes the next problem. The new supply becomes the next person who doesn't understand. The new supply becomes the next person who ruined what could have been. And that's when the old supply, the survivor, sometimes becomes the fantasy again. The narcissist starts rewriting the history of that relationship. Actually, my ex understood me in ways nobody else could. Maybe I made a mistake. Nobody has ever loved me the way she did. She was actually better than I gave her credit for. This is not growth. This is cycling. This is the narcissist realizing that the new supply is not working out as a long-term regulation source, so they're trying to reactivate the old one. That's when the Hoover often intensifies. That's when the texts become more frequent. That's when the "I miss you" messages start. That's when the accidental run-ins happen. That's when the mutual friend coincidences occur. Because the narcissist is desperate to reclaim access to the old supply. The new supply is not managing their dysregulation the way the old supply did. The new supply has boundaries. The new supply is asking questions. The new supply is not absorbing everything without comment. So the narcissist wants back what actually worked. But by this time, if the survivor has done the work, if they've healed their nervous system, if they've built awareness, if they've moved forward, that access is no longer available. The lock has been changed, and no amount of remembering the good times is going to open it. Section 11. The narcissist's inner collapse. I want you to understand what may be happening internally when a narcissist loses access to the survivor and becomes frustrated with the new supply. This is not something that's usually visible from the outside, but it's happening. When the narcissist cannot regulate themselves using the survivor anymore, and the new supply is not filling that role adequately, the narcissist is experiencing what's called a narcissistic injury. This is not an injury in the physical sense. It's a psychological injury to the ego. It's the narcissist's fragile sense of self being exposed. And a person with strong narcissistic patterns typically cannot handle this. They cannot sit with their own emptiness. They cannot acknowledge their own dysfunction. They cannot admit that the problem is internal. So what they do instead is externalize. They blame. They create narratives where everyone else is the problem. Everybody betrays me. Nobody is loyal. People are jealous of me. My ex poisoned people against me. My new supply changed. People just don't appreciate me. Everyone wants to hurt me. I'm the victim. This is externalization. It's the process of taking the internal pain and saying, that pain is coming from outside me, not from inside me. And because the narcissist is not facing the internal reality, they're not healing from it. They're just cycling. They're just moving from supply to supply, from narrative to narrative, from victim position to victim position. And internally, they are becoming increasingly unstable. Their sense of self is becoming more fragile. Their ability to regulate is becoming more dependent on external sources. Their shame is accumulating. Their isolation is increasing. Their ability to trust or be trusted is deteriorating. This is the internal karma. This is what's actually happening when it looks like they're winning. They're losing the capacity for genuine human connection. They're losing touch with reality. They're becoming more dependent on delusion. They're becoming more paranoid. They're becoming more defensive. They're becoming progressively smaller and more fragile, even though they might appear loud and grandiose on the outside. This is why by the time they hoover, they're often coming from a place of deep desperation, even if they don't show it. They're running out of supplies. They're running out of people. They're running out of time, and they know it on some level. If you want to go deeper into understanding the psychology of the narcissist's own collapse and how that affects their hoovering behavior, schedule a one-on-one. Email the-narc-op@gmail.com. We can work through your specific situation and help you understand exactly where the narcissist is in their pattern, so you can protect yourself accordingly. Section 12. Karma as cause and effect. Let me bridge the science and the spirituality for a moment, because understanding karma in this way changes everything. Karma is not mystical. Karma is not cosmic revenge. Karma is not the universe waiting to smite you. Karma is cause and effect. It's behavioral consequence. It's the harvest of repeated choices. It's reality keeping receipts. Here's how it works. If someone lies constantly, they eventually live in a world where nobody trusts them. That's karma. Not because the universe punished them, but because actions create conditions. If someone manipulates constantly, they eventually live in a world where every relationship feels unsafe and transactional. That's karma. If someone uses people, they eventually become surrounded by people who either leave, use them back, or tolerate them only for what they can get. That's karma. If someone destroys a loyal person, they eventually discover that loyalty is not something you can buy at the corner store when you need it. That's karma. If someone refuses accountability, they eventually live in a prison of their own stories, never learning, never growing, never able to actually trust anyone. That's karma. That is divine retribution. Not because the universe is petty, but because reality is real, and reality does not adjust itself to accommodate lies indefinitely. The narcissist's karma is not something that happens to them later. It's something that's built into the system they've created. It's woven into every lie they tell. It's embedded in every boundary they violate. It's encoded in every person they've damaged and then discarded. It's accumulating in every relationship they've built on falsehood. The karma is already there. The survivor is just finally no longer available to absorb the consequences. The survivor is finally no longer helping the narcissist avoid the reality of what they've created. And that's when the karma becomes visible. Section 13. Why no contact is the lock on the door. I want to be really clear about what no contact actually is, because it's not revenge, it's not cruelty, it's not a punishment. No contact is protection. No contact is a boundary. No contact is the lock on the door. No contact says, I am no longer available for confusion. I am no longer volunteering for emotional damage. I am no longer explaining reality to someone who is committed to misunderstanding me. I am no longer letting your crisis become my assignment. I am no longer paying rent in your chaos. I am no longer performing for an audience that will never see me. I am no longer available to regulate you. I am no longer the bridge you use to feel normal. No contact blocks the Hoover by removing the narcissist's access points. Physical access, phone access, text access, email access, social media access, flying monkey access, guilt access, curiosity access, loneliness access, nostalgia access, emergency access. We need closure access. Every single access point that the Hoover depends on is closed. Now, the narcissist may call this cruel. They may say, you're the one being abusive. They may try to use shame or guilt to pull you back. But the survivor calls it peace. And peace is worth more than 1,000 Hoovers. When you establish no contact, when you change the locks, when you go dark, you're not doing it to hurt the narcissist. You're doing it because you finally love yourself enough to protect yourself. And that's the actual turn in the story. That's the moment when the survivor stops being a victim and starts being a witness to their own freedom. Section 14. Why the Hoover gets more desperate. Once the old tactics stop working, the narcissist often escalates. This is really important to understand because escalation can be scary. It can feel like you're making a mistake by not responding. But escalation is actually a sign of desperation, not power. When the soft Hoover doesn't work, the narcissist tries the sentimental Hoover, bringing up memories, reminding you of good times, playing your favorite songs, showing up at places they know you'll be, contacting your family, creating situations where you run into them. When the sentimental Hoover doesn't work, they might try the sexual Hoover. Messages about missing you physically, reminders of intimacy, suggestions that maybe you could just be casual, attempts to initiate physical contact. When the sexual Hoover doesn't work, they might try the spiritual Hoover. Suddenly, they found God. They're in therapy. They've had some kind of awakening. They're reading self-help books. They're talking about how much they've changed. But, and this is important, the actual behavior is still the same. If they were actually changed, they would respect your no the first time. They would not try multiple access points. They would not escalate. They would not try different tactics. But they do. When the spiritual Hoover doesn't work, they might try the victim Hoover. Stories about how much they're suffering, how sad they are, how nobody understands them, how lost they are without you, how you're the only one who could help. This is designed to trigger your compassion and make you feel responsible for their emotional state. When the victim Hoover doesn't work, they might try the threat Hoover. Threats of self-harm, threats to your reputation, threats to your finances, threats to your safety, threats to mutual friends or family. When the threat Hoover doesn't work, they might try the anger Hoover. Rage, meanness, character assassination, public attacks, flying monkeys being mobilized. This is designed to make you react, because any reaction, anger, defense, engagement, is supply. Here's what I need you to understand. Each escalation is a sign that the previous tactic failed, and each failure is proof that your boundaries are working. Each escalation is the death rattle of access, not the sign of incoming victory. If you're feeling this, if you're experiencing Hoover escalation and you're starting to understand what's actually happening, make sure you subscribe to the channel. Because understanding that escalation is desperation, not strength, is what keeps you from caving. Section 15. The survivor's power returns. Now I want to talk about what's actually happening to you while all of this is happening to the narcissist. Your power is returning, not loudly, not dramatically, but quietly, persistently, unstoppably. At first, it just looks like small things. You sleep better, you eat better, you breathe easier. Your digestion normalizes, your hormones regulate, your immune system strengthens. You stop getting mysterious aches and pains that had no medical explanation. You realize you haven't thought about them in 3 hours, then a whole day, then a week. You stop checking their social media. You stop wondering what they're doing. You stop wondering if they're thinking of you. You stop wondering if the new supply is happier. You stop wanting them to fail. You start wanting them to just leave you alone. You start building a life that doesn't include them. You reconnect with people you distanced from because the narcissist didn't like them. You laugh at things that have nothing to do with them. You make plans that don't get cancelled by their crisis. You experience boredom and realize it's actually peaceful. You say no without over-explaining. You say yes to things you actually want. You trust your gut again. You believe yourself. You stop needing external validation. You start recognizing red flags early. You start choosing people who are stable, kind, consistent, and actually emotionally available. You start recognizing your own value, and that's when the real glow-up happens. That's when people start noticing something different about you. Not because you're trying harder, but because you're trying less. You're trying less to impress people who don't deserve your energy. You're trying less to prove your worth. You're trying less to fix things that aren't yours to fix. You're trying less to make chaos feel like stability. And as you try less at the wrong things, you have more energy for the right thing. And that energy shift, that's visible, that's magnetic, that's attractive. Not in the way you were attractive when you were broken and trying to fix someone, but in the way you're attractive when you're whole and no longer available to dysfunction. Here's what I want you to know. The real glow-up is not when they want you back. The real glow-up is when that no longer impresses you. That is the line. That's the moment when you know you're free. Not because they finally understand, but because you finally don't care if they do. Section 16. Why it worked until it didn't. The full picture. Let me bring all of this together now. The Hoover worked because you still wanted closure. You still believed the mask sometimes. The trauma bond was still active. Your nervous system was still addicted to the cycle. Guilt still had a key to your heart. Hope still had a way in. The narcissist knew exactly which emotional buttons to push. You were still looking for the good version. You were still confusing intensity with intimacy. You were still equating potential with partnership. You were still willing to sacrifice your peace for the possibility of peace. But it stops working when your nervous system begins to regulate. You start noticing the pattern. The repetition becomes visible. The inconsistencies become undeniable. Peace becomes more valuable than access. The trauma bond weakens. Your body stops responding to the bait. Your mind becomes clearer. Your intuition becomes louder. You stop confusing their chaos with your responsibility. You stop believing the performance. You stop needing them to change. You stop hoping for accountability. You stop looking for the good version. You stop making excuses. You stop defending them. You stop explaining yourself. You stop reacting. You become quiet. And that quiet is the signal that the Hoover has stopped working. Section 17. The science of your healing accelerates. I want you to understand the actual neuroscience of what happens to you as you move away from the narcissist. Your nervous system begins a process called vagal tone development. The vagus nerve is your healing nerve. It's the primary nerve of your parasympathetic nervous system, the rest and digest system. When you're in chronic stress, in trauma, in dysregulation, your vagal tone is poor. Your vagus nerve is offline. You're stuck in fight or flight. But when you go no contact, when you remove the stressor, your vagus nerve begins to activate. You can stimulate this with deep breathing, singing or humming, cold water exposure, gentle movement, social connection with safe people, therapy, meditation, time in nature, touch from safe people. As your vagal tone improves, your nervous system becomes more regulated. You're spending more time in a state of rest rather than a state of threat. And in that state of rest, something crucial happens. You begin to heal. Your immune system strengthens. Your digestion improves. Your inflammation decreases. Your stress hormones normalize. Your memory consolidates. Your brain makes new connections. Your perspective shifts. Your capacity for joy returns. This is neurobiological healing. This is not just emotional. This is actual physical change, and it happens naturally when you remove the stressor, when you go no contact. The narcissist's Hoover is banking on you still being dysregulated. It's banking on your nervous system still being in threat mode. But if you've been in no contact for any period of time, your nervous system has already started healing. And a healed nervous system recognizes threats accurately. It doesn't mistake intensity for intimacy anymore. It doesn't confuse chaos with connection anymore. It recognizes the pattern and moves away from it. This is your body protecting you. This is your biology becoming your ally. Section 18. The two outcomes. Silent disappearance or hoovering desperation. There are generally two outcomes when the survivor becomes unresponsive to the Hoover. Some narcissists choose what I call silent disappearance. In this scenario, the narcissist accepts that they don't have access to the survivor anymore. Not because they've learned anything, not because they've developed empathy, but because they're moving on to a new supply, a new situation, a new context where they can start fresh. They fade. They post less. They're seen less. They become just another person instead of the center of everything. The word disappearance fits because they seem to just vanish from view. There's no final confrontation, no big ending, just a gradual fading as they invest their energy elsewhere. This is actually a blessing for the survivor, because silence is peace. The other outcome is hoovering desperation. In this scenario, the narcissist cannot let go. They keep trying. They keep reaching out. They keep creating situations. They keep finding new angles. The hoovering becomes more frequent, more intense, more varied. They're calling and hanging up. They're texting from blocked numbers. They're contacting through flying monkeys. They're showing up at places you go. They're creating emergencies. They're sending messages that seem accidental, but are clearly intentional. They're reaching out during your birthday, holidays, anniversaries. They're making veiled threats. They're painting themselves as the victim. Each Hoover attempt is a new desperation. And with each attempt, they're revealing the truth. They do not have access. They have lost control. They are panicking. The more desperate the hoovering, the more clear it becomes that the old system is broken. If the Hoover actually worked, they would feel secure. But hoovering that escalates is hoovering that is failing. Both outcomes, silent disappearance and hoovering desperation, are forms of collapse. One is quiet, one is loud, but both prove the same thing. The survivor is no longer available to be used. Section 19. What everyone gets wrong about karma. Most people think karma is delayed. They think they have to wait years for the narcissist to face consequences. But I'm telling you, the karma is already there. It's not arriving. It's accumulated. The narcissist is already paying the price, even if nobody can see it yet. The price is chronic dysregulation, constant paranoia, inability to trust, shallow relationships, endless cycles, no genuine intimacy, no real accountability, no actual growth, no peace, no rest, no home inside themselves. They're carrying this already. The Hoover is actually evidence that the karma is real. The Hoover is proof that the old system is broken. The Hoover is the narcissist admitting, without saying it explicitly, that they've lost something they cannot replace. When you understand that, you stop waiting for cosmic justice. You stop waiting for them to finally suffer, because they're already suffering. Not the way most people think, but suffering nonetheless. And your freedom from them is the ultimate expression of karma, because in releasing yourself, you're actually accelerating their collapse. You're the thing they depended on to feel stable, and you're gone. You're the thing they were trying to control, and you're unreachable. You're the thing they were using to regulate themselves, and you've disconnected the power source. That's the karma. Follow the narc-op to stay connected with people who understand this level of insight. Because most people won't. Most people will still be waiting for lightning bolts from heaven. But you're learning something deeper. Section 20. Reclaiming your narrative. One last thing before we close. Understanding the Hoover mechanics is how you reclaim your narrative. You get to stop being the person who keeps almost falling back in. You get to stop being the person who is not strong enough. You get to stop being the person who is not over it. You get to be the person who sees it coming and chooses something different. You get to be the person who understands the game and no longer plays. You get to be the person who learned something. You get to be the person who grew. You get to be the person who chose peace. And that's not a small thing. Most people never get out. Most people stay in the cycle. Most people keep responding to the Hoover. But you're different. You're reading this. You're learning this. You're understanding this. And that understanding is your freedom. Final section. The closing. The narcissist Hoover worked until it didn't. It worked until your nervous system healed. It worked until your eyes opened. It worked until your peace became more important than their potential. It worked until you stopped confusing their panic with love. It worked until you realized the truth. They were not coming back because they loved you better. They were coming back because they lost control. And by the time they reached for that door again, the one they used to enter so easily, the one that responded to their touch before, you had already changed the locks. Not out of anger, not out of revenge, but out of self-respect, out of self-love, out of refusal to participate in your own diminishment anymore. The Hoover was too late because you finally came home to yourself. You finally realized that the person worth fighting for was not the narcissist waiting for their chance to hurt you again. It was you. It was always you. Your peace is not their responsibility. Your healing is not their job. Your worth is not determined by their return, and your future does not require their permission. You are free, and that freedom is the real karma, not punishment from above, but consequence from within, not something that happens to them, but something that happens through your own refusal to participate in your own destruction anymore. That's what the Hoover couldn't survive. That's what the Hoover couldn't overcome. That's what the Hoover tried so hard to prevent. Your own reclamation of yourself. And you did it anyway. You chose yourself. And that choice is everything. The end. A final word. If you're in the midst of a Hoover right now, if you're feeling confused about whether to respond, if you're wondering whether maybe this time it's different, I want you to know you're not alone. Thousands of people are in this exact place. You can get through this. Your nervous system will heal. Your clarity will come. And one day you'll look back at this moment and you'll understand exactly why you couldn't go back. Not because of them, because of you. Because you finally became someone who knew your own worth. And that person doesn't accept less ever again. Take care of yourself. You deserve it.